Hello YouTube, welcome back to another video, and today we will be grading every number 2 overall draft pick. This video took like over an hour to make, grading everything and shit like that, and searching up the different draft classes and stuff like that, and it took a while, so please just watch like at least 2 minutes of the video maybe, or you can skip to the end or something like that. By the way, I didn't do every number 2 overall pick technically. I only did 1981 and forward, because there's only like 2 or 3 players that are actual notable that were selected number 2 overall before 1981. But if this video gets a decent amount of views, I'll do the other ones too. It's gonna be a lot boring. It's gonna be really boring though. Not gonna lie. That's what happened with the number 1 overall pick video that I did. You should check that one out too. It's also pretty interesting. Same thing happened where the number 1 overall pick video, the newer eras were so much more interesting, and later ones were the original number 1 overall pick from like 1970s and before were really boring. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get started with the video. And by the way I grade these is what they did for the franchise, or how well they played, or who they got traded for, and it also depends on who else was available in the draft class. And when I say who else was available in the draft class, by that I mean, like, take Darko Milicic as an example. He was drafted in 2003 with a 2nd overall pick. They could have drafted number 3 overall pick Carmelo Anthony, number 4 overall pick Chris Bosh, or number 5 overall pick Dwayne Wade instead, but they chose fucking Darko Milicic. So he gets an F because they had multiple players that they could have drafted right after him instead of fucking Darko Milicic, who also played terrible. So that's what I mean by who else was available. So as an example, in the 1996 draft, I'm not gonna criticize whoever drafted whoever it was number 2 overall, because Kobe was a 13th overall pick, Steve Nash was like a 20th something, I think, and Ben Wallace wasn't even drafted, and Jermaine O'Neal was a 2nd round pick, I think. So they weren't really known, so I'm not expecting them to draft someone so high up who shouldn't have been that high up, and they just managed to develop and become really good just like Kobe. So I'm not going to criticize any franchise for that though, but that's how I grade it. But if you want like a more in-depth explanation, check out that number 1 overall pick video that I did. There's better instructions on that. But anyway, for the first one in the 1981 draft, the Pistons selected Isaiah Thomas with the number 2nd overall pick. I graded an easy A+. He's one of the greatest point guards of all time. He won them 2 championships. An interesting fact, Isaiah Thomas did not want to go to Detroit because Detroit is a crappy city. I've been there multiple times, and my dad literally got robbed there before. I hate it there. It sucks, and it's really sad. But anyway, he really didn't want to go, so he was really disrespectful to the coaches and the Detroit Pistons people and workers, I guess, or something like that, because he really didn't want to go, but they still drafted him number 2 overall. And that was a great decision too, because they won 2 championships and he became a Hall of Famer thanks to that. In 1982, Terry Cummings got drafted. I gave it a B+. He's actually pretty good. He averaged 20 and 10 for his first 2 seasons with the Clippers, and he got traded for some useless, I guess, but he was pretty solid though. He was pretty underrated, honestly. 1983, Steve Stepanovic. He's okay. He's not very good, So he's a D+. Nothing. He's not very good. Okay. For the Pacers, by the way. 1984, they drafted Sam Bowie by the Trailblazers. He was mid. He's a solid role player, I guess, but they drafted Sam fucking Bowie over Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley. And technically, John Stockton was also in that draft class, but John Stockton was a way lower draft pick, so I don't blame him for that once again. But Charles Barkley, I think, was like the 5th pick or something like that, and MJ was the 3rd overall pick, so the fact that they chose fucking Sam Bowie over him was fucking crazy to me. That's ridiculous, bro. The Trailblazers really shoot themselves in the foot like this on multiple occasions. It's fucking ridiculous. 1984, the Pacers drafted Wayman Tisdale. I know most of y'all have not heard of him, and until I searched him up, I did not know him, but he was actually a really, really good player. He averaged like 17 and 9, and he eventually got traded for a really good player for the Pacers as well. So it was a pretty solid pickup for the Pacers. The 1985 draft class, aside from Patrick Ewing, there's not much good players on there, so that's actually a really solid pick. 1986, Len Bias, he's an F. like I said, Len Bias, rest in peace to him and everything, but he provided no value. He really died, you know. And sadly, a dead player isn't gonna do anything for your franchise, so it's an F. Okay. Rest in peace, though. He would have become a Hall of Famer for sure. He was really good, but he died, so no value. That's an F. 1987, the Suns drafted Armin Gilliam. He was an okay role player, I guess. He's a C. 1988, Pacers drafted Rick Smits. He's a B. He's pretty good. 1989, the Clippers drafted Danny Ferry. And Danny Ferry himself wasn't very good, but he never played for the Clippers, and he got traded for Ron Harper, who is, really, really good. Ron Harper averaged like 20-plus points per game for a couple seasons at the Clippers, and he was really good. He was a bucket there, so that was a great trade. Trading a bad player in Danny Ferry for Ron Harper was a great pickup. 1990, OKC / the Seattle Supersonics drafted Gary Payton. That's an easy play, A+, He's one of the greatest point guards of all time, and also, one of the greatest defensive players of all time. That's an easy A+. He's, top 5 player in their franchise. 1991, the Nets drafted Kenny Anderson. He was a solid player. He averaged like 13 points and 9 assists. Solid pickup. 1992, the Hornets drafted Alonzo Mourning with the number 2 overall pick. And he averaged like 20 and 10 and like 2 blocks per game for his first 2 seasons there. And then he got traded to Miami for Glenn Rice, who was also really, really good for them. So, aside from the 2 all-star level seasons that Alonzo gave him after he got drafted, they also traded him for Glenn Rice. So, they drafted 2 top 5 players in their franchises. Not drafted, but drafted one and traded for a different one using that draft pick. And Alonzo didn't want to play for Charlotte as well, so, they traded him for another all-star level guy in Glenn Rice. So, that was an excellent trade. The Charlottes actually made a good fucking decision in this draft, surprisingly, and that's good for them. 1993, the Sixers drafted Sean Bradley. Sean Bradley's pretty good. He averaged like 8 points and 8 rebounds and a couple blocks or something like that. But they could have drafted Penny Hardaway instead. I can't remember what draft pick Penny Hardaway was. I think he was a top 10 pick, though, wasn't he? Let me search it up real quick. Yeah, Penny was a number 3 overall draft pick, and yeah, they decided to draft Sean Bradley over him for some reason. I don't know why. Sure, he might be 7'6" or whatever, but Penny Hardaway clearly better even in college, I'd say. So I don't know what. Actually, no, did Penny even go to college? I can't remember. But yeah, that was a stupid fucking decision drafting Sean Bradley over him. But Sean Bradley wasn't that bad. He got traded to the Nets for Derek Coleman, I think. Or something like that, I don't know. There's a trade that happened. They picked up another good player, but that was still a bad decision. 1994, the Mavericks drafted Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd was really good. He averaged like 12 points and 7 assists or something like that. But they traded him to the Suns before he could become a good player, and they traded for Stephon Marbury instead. Sam Cassell. They traded for Sam Cassell. They traded Jason Kidd for Sam Cassell. And Sam was okay, but drafting a future Hall of Fame point guard that was also still really young for Sam Cassell and a bunch of role players kind of stupid. I ain't gonna lie. So, that's that. 1995, the Clippers selected Antonio McDyess. He was okay. Didn't do much. 1996, the Raptors drafted Marcus Camby. I give it a C+, and I know y'all thinking, well, it should be an F or something because they could have drafted Kobe, Steve Nash, Stephon Marbury, Ben Wallace, Jermaine O'Neal. But like I previously said, man, all those guys weren't even in the lottery except for Kobe, I think. Steve Nash was the 20th pick. Stephon Marbury, actually, no, never mind. Stephon Marbury was like a 6th pick or something like that. But except Marcus Camby was better than him in college, and Marcus is actually a really good player. But he hit his prime once he got traded to the Denver Nuggets. I wish the Raptors kept him for longer. He definitely would have been way better. But, Marcus Camby is a DPOY and arguably a better player than Stephon Marbury to begin with. It's just that Stephon Marbury in the beginning of his career was definitely better than Marcus. But aside from that, Ben Wallace wasn't even drafted, and Jermaine O'Neal was like the 30th pick or something like that. So that wasn't a bad draft. 1997, Sixers selected Keith Van Horn. The Sixers once again make another fucking terrible decision. They have more upcoming too. But they drafted Keith Van Horn and then traded him to the Nets for literally nothing, even though they could. Keith Van Horn was an all-star level guy that could have helped out Allen Iverson. He's D. That's just a terrible fucking news. What? Dude, I swear that 76ers pissed me off so bad with their shitty-ass draft decisions, but they also took Jahlil Okafor, #1 overall pick, before too, even though they drafted Joel Embiid the year before. Why the fuck would you draft 2 centers with a top pick, bro? I don't know. The 76ers are just fucking stupid, though, you know. 1998, the Grizzlies selected Mike Bibby. They traded him for nothing, pretty much. That was kind of bad. He was solid for them. He hit his prime with Sacramento, though, when he got traded there. They should have kept him, but, you know, they traded him, so that's a C. 1999, again, the Grizzlies trade Steve Francis. That's ridiculous, bro. Steve Francis is a Houston Rockets legend. You know, he got his jersey retired, and he was a really good player. But they traded him for literally nothing. So that's a D also, since they literally gave up a future, you know, Hall of Famer for nothing. In 2000, again, the Grizzlies do a terrible draft. They drafted Stromile Swift. He was solid in the first season of his career. He averaged like 11 and 6, but after that, he just fizzled out and got way worse. They could have drafted plenty of other players, to be honest. Yeah, that's just a terrible pick. 2001, the Clippers select Tyson Chandler. He never played for them. He got traded to the Bulls for Elton Brand, so that's an A, since Elton Brand was a really, really, really good player for the Clippers. And Tyson Chandler wasn't that good for the Bulls either, and then eventually he got to New York and all those other places. He won a Defensive Player of the Year and stuff. And overall, he's a really, really good player, but wasn't good for the Bulls and didn't even play for the Clippers. But that's an A, just because they got Elton Brand out of that trade. 2002, the Bulls selected Jay Williams, and I think this story is somewhat famous, but he got into a motorcycle accident, I think, and he only played 1 season in the NBA since he was crippled for the rest of his life. Not literally crippled, but he couldn't, like, run or anything, so that's an F, since same thing like Len Bias, can't play, provides no value. 2003, the Pistons, like I said earlier, selected Darko Milicic. That's a fucking F, bro. Why the hell did the Pistons select Darko Milicic? Chris Bosh, Carmelo Anthony, and Dwayne Wade were already arguably better players than him in college or whatever the hell Darko played in. Yet, they selected him, who doesn't really fit with the fucking Pistons roster well. They drafted him instead of these guys. They literally whiffed on... They could have drafted 3 future, like, top 15 players in each of their positions. And seriously, you know what? I understand not drafting Dwayne Wade or Carmelo since they already had guards and forwards and like Tayshaun Prince and Chauncey Billups. But if they needed a power forward, why didn't they just or center like Darko? Why didn't they just draft Chris Bosh? He would have fit the team way better anyway, since he's actually athletic, while Darko isn't athletic. That was a stupid decision. At the same time, the Pistons really won a ring the next year, so I don't think that was bad at all. And you know, definitely would have, their championship window would have been way longer if they actually drafted one of these guys, though, but they did what they did. 2004, the Hornets selected Emeka Okafor with the second pick. At the C+, he was pretty good for his first couple of seasons, and then he got like some sort of injury or something. He wasn't that good, but they could have drafted Luol Deng or Andre Iguodala or Josh Smith, who are all all-stars, and those guys were like Luol Deng was the 8th pick, and I think Iguodala was at the 10th, and Josh Smith was like the 16th or something like that. But, you know, second pick, I know that's like a big difference. At the same time, they definitely could have drafted Luol Deng instead. I know Emeka was really, really good in college, and I don't know. I guess that was worth the pick. I just didn't live up to the hype, though. And my bad, guys. Apparently, I forgot to do the 2005 draft. Okay, whatever. Wait a second. Okay, wait a second. You can skip this part real quick. Draft selections. Oh yeah, well the second overall... Wait, what the hell was the second overall pick? The second overall pick of the... I don't know what happened, but I literally can't find who was the second overall pick in 2005, so we'll skip that. Y'all can check that on your own or something, I guess. But In 2006, the Bulls selected LaMarcus Aldridge with the 2nd overall pick. That's a really good pick. But you know what they did with it? The reason why I gave it an F is because they traded him for nothing. They traded him to the Trailblazers for nothing. They traded a future top 20 power forward of all time and Hall of Famer for literally nothing. And the amount of times Bulls fumble talent is fucking crazy to me. They traded Ron Artest a couple years before that, even though Ron Artest was becoming really good. And, you know, they also traded Elton Brand, like I said earlier, too. And it's just crazy. They also traded Lauri Markkanen. You know, I guess that itself wasn't that bad, honestly. Lauri didn't have that type of potential at that point, so I don't blame them for trading him. But trading Ron Artest and Elton Brand is just fucking crazy, since Elton Brand averaged like 24 and 12 in his first 2 seasons with the Bulls, too, or something like that. And the Bulls are also just a shitty franchise, except for Michael Jordan. 2007, Kevin Durant got drafted with the 2nd overall pick by OKC/Seattle. That's an easy A+. It's literally Kevin Durant. Arguably a top 3 small forward of all time, arguably 2nd. So, you know, 2008, the Heat drafted Michael Beasley, and I give it a B. And he averaged like only 12 points for his first 2 seasons, and then he got traded to Minnesota, and he averaged like 19. But you know, they traded him. I know like the trading him before he was Brown's kind of crazy, but they traded him to get Chris Bosh and LeBron later on for salary cap space. So I don't think that was bad. Wasn't a bad decision at all. 2009, they drafted Hasheem Thabeet, I guess. Yeah, that's a fucking atrocious decision. The Grizzlies once again whiffed in draft. It's an F. They could have drafted James Harden with a number 2 overall pick because he was drafted a pick after, or Steph Curry was a number 6 overall pick, or DeMar DeRozan was 9th instead. But instead they drafted some random, like, I think he was Tanzanian. I can't remember, but they drafted some random Tanzanian dude named Hasheem Thabeet, who only averaged 1 point per game instead of a top 4 shooting guard of all time and the greatest point guard of all time and one of the best scorers in the 2010s and one of the best defenders in the 2010s. So, pretty ridiculous, isn't it? The Grizzlies is such a terrible fucking... You know what? They're not a terrible franchise, but draft-wise, they've only made like 3 good draft decisions in their entire, you know, history, and one of them, Jaren Jackson Jr. Other one is upcoming in 2019. I know we all know him. In 2010, the Sixers again make another terrible fucking decision. They drafted Evan Turner. It's a C+. He was really good. He averaged 17 points at one point in his 3rd season, but that was on a terrible 76ers squad, and he was kind of stat padding, to be honest. They could have drafted DeMarcus Cousins, Gordon Hayward, or Paul George instead, but Gordon Hayward and Paul George were much lower picks, but DeMarcus Cousins was like the 4th overall or 5th overall pick. They should have drafted him instead. Kind of ridiculous, because Sixers didn't have a center at the time, I'm pretty sure, too, so I don't know, that's just stupid again. 2011, Derek Williams, Timberwolves, that's a D, he was okay. 2012, the Hornets select Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. He's okay, but they could have drafted Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard, Harrison Barnes, and Andre Drummond instead. And also potentially Draymond Green and Chris Middleton, but, you know, they were way lower picks. You know, Chris Middleton was like a 20-something, and Draymond was a 29th, I think. So, still could have drafted Bradley Beal and Damian Lillard, though. The Hornets just suck, also. That's a D. 2013, the Orlando Magic selected Victor Oladipo. I'm gonna go on another tangent again, but what the flying fuck were the Magic doing? Oladipo was an all-defensive level guy and was averaging 17 per game in his 2nd season and like 16 in his 3rd one on solid efficiency and was one of the best young players in the NBA. Yet they traded him and the draft rights to Domantas Sabonis, who's literally like one of the best centers in basketball right now, for like a 30-year-old Serge Ibaka. Fucking ridiculous. Why the hell did they even trade for Serge Ibaka anyway? They weren't trying to win anything. They didn't even... Dude, the only players they had on that roster at the time was like Tobias Harris, JJ Redick, and I think Nikola Vucevic, maybe. And that's clearly not enough to win a ring, and they knew that. Yet they decided to like draft Serge Ibaka. Or, not draft, but trade for Serge Ibaka. Stupid. 2014... the Bucks selected Jabari Parker. He was really good before he tore his ACL or whatever. And like I said, man, he's a D because he actually had a couple good seasons before the injury. But, you know, he provides no value anymore. So he's a low grade. He's a D. 2015, the Lakers drafted D'Angelo Russell with the second overall pick. That's just crazy to say. He's a D plus. He was okay with the Lakers. He's mid, but and got traded later on for pretty much nothing, I think. But they could have drafted Kristaps Porzingis instead. And at the time, by the way, they were looking for like a shooting center. By the way, the Lakers around this time also had invested Zubac, but traded Zubac because they wanted a shooting center or a more versatile center, which is what Tingus Pingus is. But they didn't draft him, and instead, they drafted D'Angelo Russell. What the fuck were they thinking, bro? Jeez. 2016, the Lakers drafted Brandon Ingram with the second overall pick. He was mid. He was solid. He was a good young player with potential, but they traded for a certain someone along with the player that's also getting drafted number 2 overall next year. But I'll give it a B plus because of that trade. Otherwise, it'd be like a C plus or something. 2017, Lonzo Ball got drafted. It's also a B plus. Him and Brandon Ingram got traded for Anthony Davis, and Lakers won a ring, and AD was one of the best players in the NBA for the next couple of seasons. So that's an excellent trade for the Lakers. I give it a B plus, maybe even an A, to be honest. 2018, the Sacramento Kings drafted Marvin Bagley. That's an F minus. Look, Marvin is actually a pretty solid player, not gonna lie. He's a great rebounder, solid rim protector. He can score inside. He's very athletic and he can shoot. But they drafted him over Luka Doncic, Jaren Jackson Jr., Trae Young, Jalen Brunson, and many other good players. And this is just a stupid decision. Bro, Marvin Bagley was a beast in college, but at the same time, though, why did they draft someone like Jaren Jackson Jr.? Jaren was really, really good in college, was one of the best college players, and had way higher potential than Marvin ever did, yet they still drafted Marvin over him. I don't know, the Kings just suck, really. 2019, like I said earlier, one of the only good draft picks in Grizzlies history, they drafted John Morant with a second overall pick. He's an A+, even though he's, not been very good recently, but that's that. 2020, the Warriors drafted James Wiseman. That's an F. Maybe even an F minus, to be honest, like Marvin Bagley, because James Wiseman wasn't even a good player like Marvin was. They drafted him over LaMelo Ball, and I know Melo didn't fit with the Warriors team. At the same time, though, LaMelo was arguably a better player coming out of, Latvia or something. I don't know, Ethiopia, not Ethiopia, I meant the... He played in one of the Baltic states, one of the Baltic nations, but Lithuania, I think, yeah. But, he was arguably a better player in a way that had a way higher potential, and, Steph was getting up there in age even in 2020, he was still like 30, 32 or something like that. He was clearly showing signs of regression. He was really injured for the entire season the year before that, and that's why they even got the second overall pick to begin with. So I don't know why they didn't draft a young, high-potential point guard like him. And, dude, LaMelo would have been so much better than he is now if he was on the Warriors right now and got to learn under Steph Curry and Coach Kerr and stuff like that. I don't know. That was stupid. I don't know. The Warriors franchise should have collapsed after this. But, they got lucky since the Warriors are the golden boys, the golden child of the NBA, along with the Lakers. Yeah, I don't know. 2021, the Rockets drafted Jalen Green, and I don't know if y'all know this, but I am a massive Rockets fan, and I hate Jalen Green, like genuinely, I fucking hate him. And when I found out last season that he got a $40 million extension for this next season, and the next season, and the next season, and the next season before that, I was fucking pissed. Paying this nigga Jalen Green, who hasn't gotten any better in fucking, 4 years? He hasn't gotten any better since he drafted in the last 4 years. He's been averaging the exact same stats and has even gotten worse in some efficiency-wise. The only thing he's improved in, even slightly, is his defense, which is, solid at times. But aside from that, his game hasn't changed. He's still inefficient and inconsistent as hell. And overall, this nigga is ass. I fucking hate him. We need to trade him for Giannis, or not Giannis, because Giannis is too old, but Devin Booker. Jalen Green is really just a Walmart version of Devin Booker with athleticism. So we need to trade Jalen Green for Devin Booker, because Devin Booker is really just a better Jalen Green. Okay, and and by the way, instead of drafting Jalen Green, they were looking for big men as well. Or they also wanted guards too. They drafted Sengun with a 16th pick or something like that, which I love Sengun. He's my GOAT. He's Sengoat. But I love him. They could have drafted him and put him at center like usual. They could have drafted Evan Mobley with the second pick because he went third. They could have drafted Franz Wagner. He was like a sixth. Jalen Suggs was also like the fifth or something like that. Jalen Suggs is better than Jalen Green, by the way. I know y'all might think I'm crazy for saying that, and sure, Jalen Green might be way better at scoring than Jalen Suggs, but Jalen is an elite defender. He's one of the best in the NBA, and is also more efficient and consistent, and also better at passing. So I would have rather had a more winning player like Jalen Suggs on my team than fucking Jalen Green. Could have also drafted Josh Giddey or Scotty Barnes, which would have been an even better pick. And I don't know. Honestly, though, the Rockets were, is my franchise right there. But we're still in a really good place right now. We have tons of draft picks. We still have, some of the best young players in the NBA, like Sengun, Amen Thompson, and Tari Eason. And overall, we have a bright future ahead of us. Hopefully, at least, Anyway, that's a C. I fucking hate Jalen Green. 2022, the OKC drafted Chet Holmgren. That's an easy A+. He's one of the best defenders in the NBA and one of the best big man, really. Easy A+. 2023, Brandon Miller got drafted by Hornets with the second overall pick. That's an A. He was injured for a lot of the season this season, but his first rookie season, he was really good too. I see tons of potential with him. Dude's like 6'8", and he might get bigger, honestly. But once he gains some weight, he can become a great two-way player and also an excellent scorer. And he can become like a Paul George, like everyone says, I see tons of potential with them, and it really sucks that him and LaMelo and also Mark Williams have to play in the fucking Hornets franchise, because both of them would be so much better playing for their actual winning franchise. It's ridiculous. 2024, the Wizards drafted Alex Sarr. That's an A. Honestly, in a redraft, I think Zachary Risachet and Alex Sarr will be in the first and second spot. Zachary Risachet is super underrated still, dude. He's the first overall pick, and I know people are saying nobody talks about him, but he's really good this season. Dude shot like 35% from three. He's 6'8" or 6'9", and is also a great defender and solid rebounder and passer. And I don't know, I really like him though. And Alex Sarr definitely should be the second overall pick again, even in the redraft. I think Alex and also Zachary obviously have more potential than Stephon Castle does. But Stephon Castle's a great player, too. He's a great pickup at number 4. And, my Rockets made another... I think it's a bad decision so far. They drafted Reed Shepherd with a number 3 overall pick. And I think Reed Shepherd could be really, really good, and especially playing next to Fred VanVleet. But we have too many good players on the fucking roster, seriously. The good thing is, though, we, honestly, I really want Steven Adams to come back into our team. Next season, we should re-sign him because his contract's ending this, and he's a free agent this summer, but I don't know. I want to re-sign him at the same time, though. I need Jabari Smith, Cam Whitmore, Reed Shepherd to get more playing time, and also Tari Eason. So I don't really know what to do. Tari Eason's been starting recently, so I guess it'd be the other 3 that I mentioned that'd be on the bench, but... Yeah, aside from that, though, that's pretty much it for the videos. I think the gradings I gave are pretty fair, I'd say. And, yeah, thank you for watching, y'all, and bye. Have a great rest of your day.